Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. First, again, I want to welcome all of the new subscribers. There just keeps on getting more and more. It's great to have you all. This video is going to be mainly on Patreon at first, at least. I don't know if I'll ever put it over on YouTube, but for now, it's going to be on Patreon. So, a special welcome to you all on Patreon. The patronage here is, and by that I mean the number of patrons, is just exploding. It's nice to see, and not just that more and more are joining, but more and more are participating in the conversation. And we have a great bunch of people here. Great backgrounds, a lot of experience. So in addition to what I say, you're going to get something out of what some other people here say and the questions that they ask. And I'm sure that some of you will have a lot to contribute. I hope that you do. For if this goes over on YouTube someday, we'd welcome to have you over on Patreon. The depths of the conversation tends to get a little bit deeper. The specifics of the things I address gets a little bit more into the details, and it's really kind of a different community, and we'd love to have you if that's your thing. I got up yesterday and checked the news. I'm shooting this on a Tuesday. Got up Monday, checked the news to see that they were saying that there were 9 mass shootings over the weekend. Now, you know, we have to be careful with the data. You know, you can make things seem better or worse depending on what you're trying to do. With statistics, and they have changed how they figure mass shootings a couple of times over the years, maybe more than a couple, I don't know. But now they figure, or they claim, that everything with 4 or more people who are killed or injured makes it a mass shooting. Now, I don't doubt that a bit. I'm surprised there weren't 9 in Chicago. But most of these are gang-related or at least related to certain groups of people who are predisposed to that kind of behavior. And they're, before anybody starts jumping up and down too much, there's nothing racial about that. There are groups of people. We all know there are groups of people who act differently, right? You're going to have a different kind of behavior in a country bar late at night than you're going to have at the ladies' tiddlywink competition down at the church. It's just the way it is. And where you go, you're going to find that behavior is different. So anyway, whether these were, and most of these were not active shooter, they might be considered active shooter, but there's a slight difference between active shooter and mass shootings, which I'll address here in just a second. I think I'll talk about active shooter first, because this is something that, as things get a little dicier in our society, more people ought to think about. It doesn't matter where you go. You could be at the store, you could be at church, you could be at work. There are potentials for active shooter situations, and you need to put some thought into what to do about it before it happens, and that's what I want to do here. Now, I teach active shooter, and when I do it for companies, they often want me to kind of get in some weeds that I feel really are not important. You know, when I used to teach self-defense seminars, especially self-defense for women seminars, one of the things that everybody wanted to know were numbers and percentages. For instance, what percentage of women are sexually assaulted during their lifetime? Or what percentage of college-age females are sexually assaulted during their college years? You know, you can make these numbers really big depending on how what parameters you set. And there are a lot of people out there that want to make these figures as big as they can, because then it's scarier. And I know a lot of people who taught those kinds of classes that I did, those seminars, self-defense for women. They did like to come out with all these scary figures, you know, so that the girls were just scared to death. And I didn't do that. And one of the first things that I told them was that I wasn't going to share those numbers because it didn't make any difference, and I didn't care. And boy, you should have heard the gasps in the crowd when I said that. It doesn't matter. You don't care the percentage of women. Yeah, well, that's not what I meant. I do care about people getting hurt, of course. But the thing is, it matters a lot less. You hear the Amazon driver dropping over something over across the street, playing his radio too loud. You know, there are some of you who say, or saying right now, you got to get out of the city. You got to get out of the suburbs. You know, I've addressed that before, and I guess I'm going to have to do it again, and I will. But you know, there are a lot of interesting things and a lot of good things about living in the suburbs, and I'll get back to that on another one. So they said, you don't care about you know, what percentage of people get hurt. That's not it. It doesn't matter because it happens to 100% of the people it happens to. And when I'm teaching people, I care about each individual person. I don't care about a percentage of a group. I don't care about a percentage of women, of men, of kids, of dogs, of Americans, of world citizens. I don't care. What I care about are the individuals who are dealing with the situations, and I want to prepare them, to help prepare them to be able to deal with those situations and come out of it alive and as unscathed as possible. So one of the things that they just love me to talk about is what percentage of active shooter situations occur in, there's all sorts of different categories, you know, educational, religious, healthcare, business, you know, whatever. Doesn't matter. I don't care. And one of the dangers of that is that if you happen to work or participate in one of the lower ones, you might not take these situations seriously. And you might say, oh, okay, well, in my area, there's only 4% chance that it will happen, so I guess I don't have to worry. You should be concerned, you know, I won't say worry, but you should be aware and concerned no matter where you are. It doesn't matter whether you're at church, whether you're at the doctor's office, whether you're at school, whether you're at the grocery store. These things happen everywhere all the time. You remember that one that recently happened, well, fairly recently, to where the guy went into a grocery store you know, and killed 10 people. Now, there was something interesting about that. I don't know whether I'll get into that later in this video or not. If I think about it, I will. If not, it's worth another video that I'll cover later. An active shooter, what is it exactly? An active shooter situation is a situation in which an individual, usually just one, sometimes more than one, goes into a contained or semi-contained area, usually, though not always, a building, with the purpose of killing sometimes one individual, a particular individual, a targeted individual, but not usually, as many people or groups of people as they can before they're stopped. Okay, that's it. They want to get in, whether or not they're targeting an individual. It doesn't matter. Usually when they take out that person, they're going to keep on killing until it is concluded. Now, the way that it is almost always concluded is at first resistance. Okay, an active shooter situation continues until it is met with first resistance. Now, there are a couple things that I didn't say in there. I know a lot of you caught this. Maybe some of you didn't. I didn't say first law enforcement resistance. Okay. Because many active shooter situations are brought to a conclusion with simple resistance from civilians, from citizens. Okay, I also didn't say at first contact with armed resistance. Now, while armed resistance tends to bring it to a better conclusion, the resistance itself can bring many of these things to a conclusion, and then usually, not always, but usually, the shooter kills himself. Okay, so it's not a matter. They're not trying to take hostages. They're not trying to get away. They're wanting to kill, and this is what makes it particularly dangerous. They want to kill until they realize, okay, killing time is over. I can't kill anymore, and now it's time for me to go as well. Okay, it's a very different mindset, you know, and there's a lot of psychology at work in there that we won't get into here, but it's important to know that this is what you're dealing with. Now, the three options that are most put out there to people are to run, hide, and fight. Those are the three in that order: run, hide, and fight. Run if you can. That means when you start hearing pop, 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 you get out of there. Okay. Now this means that you need to know how to get out of there. And we've talked about this before. If you're at work, you should, and maybe your work has these drills. It'd be good if they do, to where maybe people come around and they say, now, do you know where the egress is? Do you know where this hallway lets out? Do you know where the elevators let out? Do you know where the lower floors let out? How best to get out of here? You should kind of have that set out at those places that you frequent, you know, at work and church and things like that. Know where all the exits are and how to get to them, and how to get to them not just in the most direct way, but maybe in kind of a circuitous way, because sometimes the quickest way out of something is around it, not through it. Okay, so you boogie on. You know, try to get the people with you to come with you if that's your decision. But if they disagree, and unless it's your kids, you know, then you go on, because you have to be responsible for your life. Know your points of exit, and when you're going into places, we talked about this several videos ago. When you go to a place, when you go out to eat, take notice. See where the back doors are. See where the side doors are. See where the kitchen door is. If somebody comes in the front door, sometimes the best way to go out is through the kitchen. I mean, you know, if somebody comes in the front door shooting, go out through the kitchen. There's usually a back door out through the kitchen. If somebody comes in the kitchen, well, the other way around. If somebody, who knows, if you're back here and can't get to either, a chair through a window will get you out. But have these things, play these things in your mind. How do I get out of here if an emergency happens? Okay. Now, if you're running, once you get outside, call 911. Now, there will be people who say, call 911 first. Well, okay, that's a toss-up. If you think that your personal responsibility says that you want to call 911 first before you escape, that's up to you. I would suggest not. Your first job is to get out of there. It's kind of like being in an airplane, and when the cabin loses pressure and those oxygen masks drop down, you take care of yourself first. Make sure you're functional before you start helping other people. But at whatever point, call 911. Let them know exactly what's happening. Make your report as succinct as possible, as concise. Know what's going on. If you had a chance to see the shooter, be prepared to give a good description. Also, be prepared to be on the line with the 911 operator for a while. They will have a whole bunch of questions to ask you. And a lot of people get a little irritated and aggravated with these 911 operators, and they're saying, oh, why do you keep asking me questions? Get the police on the way here. Well, the police are on the way. They know where you are. Hopefully, either they can pinpoint your phone or you've told them where you are. That was the first question, where are you? The police are already on the way. Okay, but they have a whole checklist of things they want to put off, and these things are important. They may not seem important to you at the time, but they are important. And so that dispatcher is trying to fill in all their form for the information that they need. They're apprising the police as the police are on the way. They're letting them know. Also stay on the phone so the dispatcher can hear anything that's going on. That's if you're boogieing out. Okay. Now, if you don't think that you can run, your second best is to hide. Find a place to where you can secure a room, get back in the room. If it's a door that can be locked and can't be undone on the outside without a key, that's your best bet. Also, a room that's big enough so that you can get out from behind the door, some kind of an L shape. Not just a broom closet to where if he shoots through the door, which they don't usually, but if they shoot through the door, they're going to hit you. I mean, a room to where there's an offset to where you can get away from right behind the door. Then block that door. There's all sorts of different ways to block the door. If it's an inward swinging door, you're in good shape. You can block that door, hopefully, with something in there. There are different ways of tying off hinges and different ways to do it. I won't try to cover all of them here. Look up. I'm sure that there are plenty of YouTubes out there that will show you how to do that. When you get in that room, now you're calling 911 also. Some places allow you to text 911. Not all places do. So once you're in there, you want to call 911. Get the other guys, get the good guys with the guns on the way. But try to be quiet, okay? You don't know what's going on outside. If you hear shooting, and many people don't recognize what gunfire actually sounds like because all they've heard about it in the movies or on TV, and it sounds different in person. If you hear some gunfire, it'll shake up the normal person, especially if you're hiding in the dark and you don't know what's going on. And then if you don't hear anything, you don't know whether that person is left, is outside, or is standing outside your door listening, okay? So be quiet. After you've gotten the information to the dispatcher, tell everybody who's with you, shut off your phones. Shut off your phones. Shut off the sound of your phone is what I mean. Don't shut them off, but shut off the ringers. Text people that you need to. And then stay nice and quiet. Stay nice and quiet until somebody knocks on the door and says, "Is anybody in here? This is the police." Okay. Now, if they do, how do you know it's the police, right? Well, you can text the dispatcher. You can call 911 and say, "There's somebody out here that says they're the police. Are they the police?" And they'll say, "Yes, we will tell him to say, blue orchids smell good," or something like that. And then you'll hear it. You'll say, "Okay, now that's the police." I'm going over some of these a little bit quickly because there's something more important that I want to say rather than just what I teach to groups. If you can't run and you can't hide, then you got to fight. What do you fight with? Well, hopefully you've got a gun. Okay. But the problem is, and there is one statistic that I do stress, is that the vast majority of active shooter situations occur in so-called gun-free zones, right? Which means, what does that mean? Well, that means that the good people didn't bring their guns in because they obeyed the sign. What percentage? I don't know. I'm sure it's out there. I don't care. It's the vast majority. Now, there's more and more places that are starting to understand, not quickly enough, that a no gun or a gun-free zone is simply a come kill me zone. Okay, and how we kind of change this, I know some people out there who have made up little business cards, and you could probably buy them on Amazon or make them up yourself, and take them to places that you normally go that have no gun signs on their doors, and give them the card and say, I would like to come here, but I don't feel safe coming in here because you don't allow firearms, and the vast majority of active shooter situations occur in those places, just like yours, that don't allow firearms because they're soft targets. When somebody wants to go out and kill people, they don't go to gun shows and they don't go to the police department. They go to places where they don't think people are going to have guns. So now many places, and I'm not going to tell you, what you should do here, I'm just going to offer some thoughts. Many places it's not a crime to carry a gun inside. You're going to do it concealed, right? To take a gun inside a place that has a no gun sign posted. It's not necessarily a crime at all. If you do, most people are never going to see it. Okay, you decide whether you want to do it or not. Most people never do. We know that in these places with no gun signs, there's guns all over the place. Probably a lot of the employees in there have them. But if they do, if they do happen to see, somebody happens to see, and they complain about it to the manager's just going to say, hey, I need to ask you to leave. If you're going to carry a gun, at which time you can either leave or you can, take it to your car and come back in. Or, the only problem you have is if you refuse to leave, and then they have you on a trespass charge, and they'll call the police. But, it's a personal call as to whether or not you want to obey a little paper sign in a window and leave your safety up to the cooks and the wait staff, or whether or not you want to, carry, and that's up to you. Now, so I say if you're going to fight, the best thing to have is a firearm. I want to come back to running in just a second. I'll do it now, and then I'll get back to fighting. The one thing that I meant to say is, if you run, remember that a moving target is harder to hit than a stationary target. If you're running down a hallway and you think they got a good shot at you, don't run in a straight line, And I know it's difficult to remember this when you're running for your life and you're scared to death. Oh, don't run in a straight line. Don't run in a straight line. Well, you don't have to zigzag, so it takes you twice as long to get down the hallway. It's just a matter of, just kind of make yourself a little bit more unstable than usually. Get down there. Stay away from the walls. People don't understand that. One of the first things that people do who go into some specialty shooting is learning to skip bullets. And if you're running close to a wall, even if he misses you, if it catches a wall, it's just going to travel right down there, and it's going to get you. Stay out in the middle of the hallway. Now you're gonna feel that that's a little bit counterintuitive, because being out in the middle of the hallway makes you seem a little bit exposed, but that's the best advice that I can give you. Stay out in the middle of the hallway until you get to a corner and go out of his firing sight. Okay, back to fighting. If you don't have a gun, anything, if you're cornered and you have to, anything around can be a weapon, and you should look where you are and say, what is it that I can throw, stab, poke, whatever, if it comes down to that. Now, a salad fork is not a good weapon to use against a gun, but if it's the best you got, what are you going to do? You're going to do something. And the trick, and this is the key more than anything else, and that is the people who make it through these situations, more often than not, are those who are determined to get home that night. Okay, it is an animalistic survival instinct, and just as I've talked about in other videos, when you're attacked, you don't respond, or you shouldn't respond according to some kind of make-believe force continuum that, well, I'm only going to respond, with equal force that's what being brought against me. No, you explode. You become a savage. You become an animal. You're fighting with everything in the world. You're fighting with your hands and your feet and your knees and your elbows and your teeth and your head and everything, and you are going berserk. That's what will get you out of it, if you can get out of it, if you have to fight. Okay, but a determined will to live, a will to survive, and sometimes that means going through your attacker rather than away from them, makes all the difference. And there are examples after example to support that. So that's basically active shooter, and there's a lot more that I could go into, but those are the important points. A mass shooting situation is, as they define it, is usually a situation where you've got enough morons around that they get mad and they start shooting. A good friend of mine, one of the toughest guys I've ever known, loved to say, that he'd had his nose broken in 3 places, so he learned to stay out of those places. That's your first defense against mass shootings. And that is, like I said before, there are certain subsets of society in which these things occur more often than in other subsets. You have to be cognizant of that, make your decisions of where you're going to be. And sometimes playing it safe simply means, well, I can't make it to that. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it. And a lot of people, well, I'm not going to get into that. But, you know, a lot of kids are killed at these things, at these mass shootings too, because they just killed by accident. A bunch of morons come in from one group and they start shooting at people of another group or another family. And all of a sudden you got a 4-year-old dead and a 2-year-old dead and a baby who was shot through the head because they were shooting at the mother who was holding it. It's a crazy world. It's you know, the world as it exists now, if you compare it to the world that I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, is just insane. And it's not coming back anytime soon. I think we have to go down, way down to the bottom before we start bringing ourselves back up. So, you know, that's what I talk about. That's the purpose of this channel, is how do we survive this descent to the bottom so that we can start coming back up and rebuilding things, because I don't think there's any rehabbing this. I think it's a tear down. I have people ask me that sometimes. How come this country is over? How come you keep talking about, you know, you got to have hope and you got to do this? Well, I hope for the survival of me and my family and all the good people out there. Okay, it doesn't mean that I think that it can be saved. It is a tear down, you know. So anyway, that's it. I encourage you to keep these things in mind. Think about them when you go different places. Be aware. Be always ready. Remember that the only person responsible for your safety is you, and you're responsible for your safety and the safety of those who depend on you. And develop your skills to be able to provide that protection and the awareness to provide it and be ready to provide it in whatever may come your way. So I'll leave it at that. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And preparing well, there's a lot of elements to it. And the practice in the mind is where it begins. So you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.